Welcome back. It is a global health crisis with an ugly social side effect in our own communities. Kathy Lee investigates COVID-19, the spread of racism.
It's a really small, tight community. All the neighbors know each other. My parents know all the other restaurant owners. They always hang out, and it's a close-knit group.
Travel to any major city in Canada, and there's a Chinatown.
Like every weekend we come down, and everything was all revolved around here.
Of the hundreds of businesses in Calgary's Chinatown, Raymond Lau's family owns one of the oldest.
So my parents started the restaurant in 1977. It's been the same location, same family ever since. Back in China, my dad was a chef. Came here, didn't really have any other skills. And so he kind of started it, and it just kind of grew and it expanded over time.
7 years ago, Lau and his two brothers took over after their father retired. Their mother still manages, and their aunts and uncles work there too. Sacrifice and dedication have kept the doors open for more than 4 decades. But this year has proven challenging like no other. First, the collapse in oil prices, next COVID-19, and then the targeted attacks.
The restaurant was closed, there should be no one around. We heard a big bang on the door. Mom's like, who is that? She runs around, goes look, and there's flames just bursting out really high.
This happened in May. The flames did not spread to the restaurant thanks to the firefighters' quick response.
Why do you guys think that this happened?
Well, our suspicion is an arson attack. We found a red gas canister right beside it. And who knows, maybe because of the whole COVID, the whole stigma against Asians.
To avoid drawing more negative attention, the family did not report the fire to police. Lau says a few months earlier, someone called the restaurant threatening Chinese people, something they've never experienced before.
Getting a phone call, was scary, but it wasn't physical. You can actually, feel it. But when actually someone set a fire in a garbage bin right beside your restaurant, that it's only a couple meters away, that's scary.
Scary incidents like this have been happening across the country during the coronavirus pandemic. Since the first COVID-19 cases were confirmed in Wuhan, China in late December, some have blamed Chinese people for it. An Angus Reid poll of more than 500 Chinese Canadians found half were called names or insulted because of the outbreak, while 43% have been threatened or intimidated. Roslyn Kang knows the feeling. She will never forget her trip to a Calgary grocery store in mid-March.
I was doing a grocery run. I did wear a mask and I went to a store. And I was approached by a man who said a racial slur.
Kang reported the individual to staff and a manager was notified. The man eventually left the store and Kang was offered to be accompanied to her vehicle. The trauma from that encounter still lingers.
It's really hard because you're not quite sure what to do. You feel like you've got a target on your back. I've heard stories about people saying, well, I'm not even going to go shop near a store that's near my house. I would rather go shop somewhere else that's farther away, but, like an Asian supermarket where there's more Asians and I'm not going to encounter racism.
Have you had to make any changes in your life?
I did. I would carry, my cell phone close by, make sure I knew how to turn it on video right away if something happened so that I could document it.
Racism and discrimination have been called out by top officials.
Hate, violence, and discrimination have no place in Canada.
The country's chief public health officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, also became a target.
The impacts of COVID-19 in this country have been worsened by systems that stigmatize populations through racism, ageism, sexism, and others.
I am Derek Sloan.
This is Conservative MP Derek Sloan questioning who the physician worked for in guiding the country's response to the pandemic.
One of the issues with Justin Trudeau's handling of this situation has been his reliance on the advice of Dr. Theresa Tam. Theresa Tam, we sent an email out today asking, does she work for Canada or for China?
Teresa Wu Pa, a former Alberta MLA, is one of the founders of a national network called Act to End Racism, created after MP Sloan's comments and the increasing hate crimes against East Asians in Canada.
It has not been easy for racialized Canadians.
Wu Pa says she's pleased the country's leaders condemn racism against Asian people, but worries about hateful rhetoric from other powerful individuals.
I can name Kung Flu.
When we have high-profile figures and, iconic personalities, including, people like Donald Trump, calling, there's the China virus, the Kung Flu virus, and it just becomes open season for the bullies.
The world needs answers from China on the virus. We must have transparency.
Many, including U.S. President Donald Trump, have criticized China for its slow response to the pandemic and withholding information. There were also reports doctors in China were silenced and punished for sounding the alarm. China has fiercely denied all allegations, but the criticism and controversy have caused more damage.
It's heartbreaking. As humans, during a time like this of difficulty, we should be uniting and helping and supporting one another, not pointing fingers or blaming others.
Misinformation about the virus hasn't helped either. Amy Go heads the Chinese-Canadian National Council for Social Justice. A poll of more than 1,300 people in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, done by the organization, found about 14% of Canadians believe or were unsure if all Chinese or Asian people carry the virus.
And you can imagine how scary that is for us and how pervasive that racist stereotype it is.
Dr. Craig Jenny studies infectious diseases at the University of Calgary. Dispelling misconceptions and conspiracy theories about the coronavirus has become part of the work for scientists.
Did it come from a lab? Was it manufactured in a lab?
What we do know is that there's no evidence in the genome that it's a manufactured virus. What we cannot rule out, for example, is that somebody had already been studying the virus from an animal and that there was a release, but there's no evidence to support it. And the fact that it appears the epicenter was a wet market really supports the evidence that this made the jump directly from animal to human.
Despite repeated messaging from experts, it's not getting through to everyone.
It's something you have to deal with, not blow it out of proportions.
By the beginning of October, more than 35 million people around the world have been infected by the coronavirus, and more than 1 million have died. The virus does not discriminate, but in the storm of this pandemic, Asian people have been racially targeted due to the origins of the virus, misconceptions, and long-standing sentiments of xenophobia.
That's what you get for being racist.
The majority of attacks have been verbal. This was at a T&T supermarket in Mississauga, Ontario in July.
Where did we get our Wuhan communist virus? From China, from you guys. Communist virus.
The man in the video refuses to comply with the store's mask policy, and he becomes aggressive when staff politely ask him to leave.
Go back to China where you came from and take your coronavirus back to Wuhan. I'm a Canadian. There's Canadians like butt.
Beyond the verbal abuse, there have been cases of physical violence across the country. In March, a 92-year-old Chinese man with dementia gets pushed outside a convenience store in Vancouver while being subjected to racist insults about COVID-19.
I never thought I'd have to go through something like this.
For Jessica Lau, these attacks hit home.
It was a Saturday evening. It was a beautiful day, actually, so my boyfriend and I decided to go just outside on the pathway. I was longboarding and he was on one of the scooters, rolling along and he decided to pull out his phone.
His phone captured a man biking towards them and then doing this.
If the sound's on, I swear, because I'm just like, what the? What did you just do?
But that's not all. When Lau and her boyfriend re-watched the video, they realized he had also called her a racist word.
Stupid.
Whoa. I was just like, man, this it blows my mind that this happens, and especially in our city, in Calgary, where I grew up here for my whole life, 27 years of my life, and I've never experienced any kind of violent racial crime.
Racist!
As of September 9th, more than 600 racist incidents directed towards Asian people in Canada have been reported to EliminateHate.org and COVIDRacism.ca since the onset of the pandemic. Attacks have been reported in 7 provinces, with BC seeing the highest number.
In a community-led initiative, a first of its kind in Canada, several organizations across the country, including the Chinese-Canadian National Council for Social Justice, collaborated, collected, and analyzed that data. They found that Canada has a higher number of anti-Asian racism reports per capita compared to the United States, and 30% are assaults, such as targeted coughing, spitting, and physical attacks and violence.
And this kind of discrimination isn't new. It happened in 2003 during the SARS outbreak. Amy Go worked in healthcare in Toronto during the outbreak and says being blamed for the virus hurt.
People right away, without any facts, without any evidence, classified us, you are the home with SARS. You are contaminating the others. You are carrying the virus.
But anti-Chinese sentiments go even further back in history. Irene Shanker, a sociologist with Mount Royal University, says the dissent Asian people are experiencing during the pandemic is a reminder of the yellow peril period in the 19th century, when diseases were sometimes associated with Asian people.
In Canada, during the migration, it came up quite heavily because they wanted to shut the borders and not let Chinese bodies in. And that was a huge rhetoric that was used again about how Chinese bodies are dangerous bodies, right? And they will corrupt our culture, corrupt our people, bring diseases in.
To restrict the migration of Chinese people into the country after they were recruited to build the Canadian Pacific Railway, a head tax was passed in 1885.
And they were fined for, as migrant workers, to come in, do the work that no one else wanted to do, the dangerous work, because they didn't want the families to be coming in, and they didn't want them to permanently stay here.
Chinese people were even banned altogether from immigrating to Canada after the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed in 1923 and implemented for more than 2 decades before it was repealed. Shanker says racist legislation is gone, but anti-Chinese sentiments haven't disappeared. They've just been magnified during the pandemic. To avoid a repeat of SARS, the Chinese-Canadian National Council for Social Justice held a press conference after the first 2 positive cases in Toronto were confirmed to quell fears and misinformation.
We believe that it is important to do that, and the little things, or even changing one mind, would be better than none.
While police in various cities have seen an increase in hate crimes towards Asian people during the pandemic compared to other years, the number of incidents reported to them is significantly lower compared to the number reported to various nonprofit organizations. In fact, studies show hate crimes in general make up a sliver of all reported crimes in Canada, but the number is likely higher since most victims don't want to go to authorities.
That's what I told a lot of the people that have had this happen to them. I was like, just report it.
Lau posted her incident on social media after it happened, and the response was overwhelming.
Yeah, it went really, really viral.
People not only supported her,
it just shows that so many people are not for this type of behavior.
But others came forward with similar complaints. Within 24 hours, police charged 31-year-old Justin Williams, a former UFC basketball manager, with 3 counts of assault and weapons possession. The quick response was not only a relief for Lau, but also an encouraging sign.
Culturally, we've just been a very, not suppressed, but very quiet group. And we've been taught to not raise our voices, kind of be a little bit more quiet about our issues. But the movement is definitely started.
Months have passed, seasons have changed, and time has eased the worry and fear. But the attack at the grocery store still weighs on Rosalind Kang's mind.
Yeah, I do think about that day and what happened, but yeah, I think it's become, as the weeks go on or the months go on, you kind of just start to live your normal life again.
Normal for Kang these days includes her work on anti-racism. One way is sharing her story, the other is education.
Racism can be quite traumatic for many people, especially those who experience it, because they feel a sense of isolation, especially if nobody intervenes or nobody says anything.
How to be a bystander during a racist act and what constitutes racism. Act to End Racism addresses both topics through a series of educational comic strips.
And because we are often in shock, and we're not sometimes not equipped to respond. So we're trying to actually prepare people, in a linguistic and mental way to respond.
And because incidents are often underreported to police, various groups across the country have launched reporting lines. Confidential messages can be sent to a virtual assistant on Act to End Racism. Text is also available in 7 different languages to help a broader group. As COVID-19 spread into other ethnic communities, racism and discrimination followed. Hutterite colonies of southern Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba were targeted. So were Filipino workers at the Cargill Slaughterhouse in High River, the site of the country's largest COVID-19 outbreak, as well as members of the Siksika First Nation. The many incidents were addressed by Alberta's top doctor.
The virus is not restricted to any particular race, region, or community.
Data from Toronto found people of color and those in lower income communities were disproportionately affected by the virus. Experts say more supports are needed for racialized groups.
So if you're serious about racism, if you're serious about standing up for racialized people, and racialized people are marginalized in society, they are the ones who are doing precarious job, they are the ones who are dealing with housing insecurity, income insecurity, then what are you doing to address those structural things?
Amy Go's organization and others are calling on the government to include an anti-racism strategy in its post-pandemic recovery plan.
How can we talk about recovery and not deal with the disproportionate impact? How can we not confront the underlying issues? If we don't deal with that, we will continue to be disproportionately, unfortunately, negatively impacted in every way.
The impact of the pandemic has made times trying for many. It's times like these Raymond Lau values the most.
Oh, you're spilling it. Oops. Oh my goodness. I've learned to kind of cherish your family, appreciate little things in life.
As he holds on to the little things, in the back of his mind are thoughts of lingering negative sentiments long after the pandemic is over.
We're hopeful. At the same time, we're still worried. But we know that once there's a vaccine, once this virus is eliminated, that there still might be some hostility, some stigma towards Chinese people and towards Chinatown. So we know that we have a long road ahead of us still.
The road may be long, but the fight against hate carries on. Because in the darkness of racism, there is light, there is optimism, and there is understanding.
Do you think Asian people should be scared to live their lives normally? I don't think so, absolutely not. Especially not here. Actually, you know what, anywhere. We shouldn't have that fear just because of a virus and how some people act. It's not the majority, and I don't think it's reflective of people in general.
You don't need to be fearful of me, or my culture or my race. Racism is quite ugly. And it's traumatic, but kindness, that's beautiful, and that's something that we can all share.
This is not a problem that is isolated to Canada. The United Nations Secretary General is urging governments around the world to strengthen the immunity of our societies against what he calls the virus of hate.